The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Federation hummed with tension. Representatives from 1,000 worlds shifted uneasily in their anti-grav seats, their varied physiologies a testament to the diversity of life in the cosmos. At the center of the vast amphitheater, High Counselor Zix Lara of the Arcturian Collective raised all 4 of her upper limbs for silence. Esteemed colleagues, her voice resonated through the chamber, translated simultaneously into hundreds of languages. The situation in the Omega Cluster has reached a critical point. The Vex Car and the Quarian symbiote are on the brink of all-out war. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing scenes of devastation. Planets reduced to molten slag, space stations torn asunder, refugee ships fleeing in terror. Ambassador Kroll of the Silicon Concordat's crystalline form shimmered with agitation. This is the 3rd peacekeeping mission that has failed. The Federation's reputation as a stabilizing force is at stake. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Galactic Federation, for all its technological marvels and combined wisdom, was facing a crisis it seemed ill-equipped to handle. Perhaps a gravelly voice interjected, "We are approaching this problem from the wrong angle." All eyes turned to the source. Standing at one of the lower podiums was a being many of the assembled dignitaries had never seen before. Bipedal, with a curious lack of exoskeleton or energy field, the creature seemed almost fragile. High Counselor Zix Lara's tendrils twitched in surprise. "Ah, yes, representatives, may I introduce Ambassador Coral of Earth, was it? Their species has recently joined our Federation." Ambassador Coral nodded, a gesture that puzzled many of the aliens present. "That's correct, High Counselor. And with all due respect to my esteemed colleagues, I believe my people might offer a unique solution to this conflict." A ripple of disbelief swept through the chamber. Ambassador T-Lock of the gaseous hegemony expanded in indignation. "Preposterous. Your species has barely achieved faster than light travel. What could you possibly offer in such a delicate situation?" Coral smiled, an expression that unknowingly displayed his teeth, causing several nearby delegates to flinch. "Tell me, Ambassador T-Lock, what do you know about the history of Earth?" Before T-Lock could respond, Chief Archivist Elon of the Zorblaxians interjected, her brain case pulsing with excitement. "Oh, Earth is the planet with the most recorded conflicts in its pre-spaceflight history, isn't it? Fascinating stuff." The chamber fell silent. Zix Lara's tendrils coiled tightly. Surely there must be some mistake. No species could evolve to sentience with such a violent past. "And yet, here I stand," Coral said, spreading his arms. "Humanity has fought countless wars, yes, but from that crucible of conflict, we forged something remarkable, an unparalleled understanding of peace." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We've made every mistake, tried every failed strategy. We've seen the cost of war firsthand, felt it in our bones. And because of that, we know the true value of peace." The assembly buzzed with a mixture of disbelief and intrigue. Zix Lara raised a tendril for silence. "Even if what you say is true, Ambassador Coral, how does this violent history qualify you for peacekeeping?" Coral's expression turned grave. "High Counselor, esteemed representatives, let me ask you this: who better to prevent a fire than one who has been burned? Who better to disarm a bomb than one who has built them? Who better to forge peace than those who have known war?" Zix Lara finished, her voice barely a whisper. Coral nodded solemnly. "We humans have a saying, si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. We've spent millennia preparing. Now, let us help you achieve the peace this galaxy so desperately needs." The chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives recoiled at the idea of involving such a historically violent species. Others saw the logic in Coral's argument. As the arguments raged, High Counselor Zix Lara found her gaze drawn back to the holographic displays of the conflict zone. Perhaps she mused, almost to herself, it is time for a new approach. As the session adjourned, with a tentative agreement to consider Earth's offer, Ambassador Coral couldn't help but feel a mix of hope and trepidation. Humanity had found its way to the stars seeking peaceful cooperation, only to find that their warlike past might be their greatest asset. The irony wasn't lost on him. They had come as explorers and found themselves cast as peacekeepers. But as he looked out at the sea of alien faces, some curious, some fearful, some hopeful, Coral knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes it takes a warrior to forge a lasting peace. Dr. Ilara Vance stood before the holographic display, her eyes reflecting the images of Earth's tumultuous history. Battles, revolutions, world wars, millennia of conflict condensed into a visual timeline that stretched around the entire chamber. As you can see, she addressed the assembled Federation research team. A mix of curiosity and unease evident in their alien features. Human history is complicated. Chief Archivist Elon's brain case pulsed rapidly as she absorbed the information. Fascinating. Your species has engaged in more armed conflicts in a single millennium than most achieve in their entire pre-spaceflight history. Ilara nodded grimly. We're not proud of it, but we can't deny it either. War has been a constant companion in human development. The holographic display shifted, showing scenes of peacetime achievements, art, literature, scientific breakthroughs. But it's also pushed us to create, to innovate, to strive for something better. Ambassador T-Lock, who had been skeptical during the council meeting, waved a gaseous tentacle. This is precisely why involving humans in peacekeeping is dangerous. How can we trust a species with such violent tendencies? Ilara's expression hardened. Because we've learned from our mistakes. Every war taught us the value of peace. Every conflict showed us a new way to prevent the next one. The display changed again, this time showing Earth's various peacekeeping missions and diplomatic achievements. We've brokered peace between nations that hated each other for centuries. We've turned battlefields into common grounds. We understand conflict at a level few species can, because we've lived it. As the Federation team debated among themselves, the scene shifted to a military base on the outskirts of New Geneva. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood at attention, facing a group of fellow soldiers, the first human peacekeeping force. Ladies and gentlemen, she addressed them, her voice carrying the weight of command and the gravity of their mission. We're about to embark on something unprecedented. The galaxy is watching, waiting to see if the violent humans can actually keep the peace. She paced before them, her eyes meeting each of theirs. Our history has prepared us for this. We know war, yes, but that knowledge will help us prevent it. We're not here to fight. We're here to understand, to mediate, to find common ground where others see only differences. Back in the Federation research chamber, the debate had reached a fever pitch. Opinions were divided, with some seeing the potential in humanity's unique perspective, while others feared introducing such a volatile element into delicate galactic politics. Ilara's voice cut through the chaos. We're not asking you to trust us blindly. We're asking for a chance to prove ourselves, to show that our past doesn't define our future, but it does equip us to shape it. In that moment, a message came through from the High Council. The decision had been made. Humanity would be given a trial-run, a peacekeeping mission in a minor conflict zone. As the news spread, reactions across the galaxy were mixed. Some hailed it as a bold new approach to maintaining peace. Others warned of the dangers of putting weapons in the hands of galactic newcomers with a history of violence. On the transport ship heading to their first mission, Captain Rodriguez addressed her team one final time. Remember why we're here. We carry the weight of Earth's history, yes, but we also carry its hopes. We've seen the worst of what conflict can do. Now let's show the galaxy the best of what peace can achieve. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, humanity stood on the brink of a new era. They had come to the stars seeking fellowship, only to find that their greatest contribution might come from the very past they had sought to leave behind. The Peacekeepers were deploying, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if those forged in war could truly become the architects of peace. The twin suns of Nexus Prime cast an eerie purple glow over the battlefield. Captain Maya Rodriguez surveyed the scene from atop a ridge, her experienced eyes taking in every detail. To her left, the crystalline spires of the Zartuvian cities glittered ominously. To her right, the biomechanical hives of the Morokai hummed with barely contained aggression. "Sitrep," she said into her comm, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Not good, Cap," came the reply from Lieutenant Akira Chen. "The Zartuvians are accusing the Morokai of sabotaging their solar collectors. The Morokai claim it's retaliation for genetic espionage. Both sides are mobilizing for war." Maya nodded grimly. A textbook escalation scenario, with centuries of mistrust fueling the fire. Deploy the team. I want eyes and ears on both sides, and get me a direct line to both leaders. As her peacekeepers moved out, Maya couldn't help but reflect on the irony of their situation. Here they were, descendants of the most warlike species in known galactic history, trying to prevent an alien war. The reception from both sides was cold, to say the least. "We do not need the assistance of primitive warmongers," the Zartuvian Archon sneered, his crystalline form shimmering with disdain. The Morakai Queen was equally dismissive. What could a species that nearly destroyed itself know of true conflict resolution? Maya had expected this. Humanity's reputation preceded them, but she also knew that reputation could be their greatest asset. With respect, she addressed both leaders, her translator working overtime to convey the nuances of her tone. "It's precisely because of our history that we understand the cost of war better than most. We've made every mistake you're about to make. We've seen every justification you're about to use. And we've learned, the hard way, that there are always better solutions than violence." Her words gave them pause, if only for a moment. It was enough. Over the next few days, the human peacekeepers worked tirelessly. They didn't just patrol the borders or monitor communications. They got involved. Lieutenant Chen organized joint scientific teams to investigate the sabotage claims, fostering cooperation where there had been only accusation. Sergeant Maria Alvarez set up cultural exchange programs, helping each side see the other as people, not just enemies. And Maya, drawing on Earth's long history of conflict resolution, shuttled between the leaders, listening more than talking, finding common ground in the most unlikely places. But it wasn't easy. Old hatreds ran deep, and more than once, the humans found themselves in the crossfire, sometimes literally. The turning point came a week into the mission. Maya was in the middle of a tense negotiation when alarms blared across both cities. Captain Chen's voice crackled over the comm. A rogue Morakai faction has launched an attack on the Zartuvian capital. The Zartuvians are preparing a retaliatory strike. This was at the moment that could plunge the entire sector into war. Maya's mind raced, drawing on centuries of human military history and peacekeeping experience. "Lieutenant, get our ships in the air. Form a barrier between the two forces. Sergeant Alvarez, I need you to broadcast on all frequencies, in both languages. Use the cultural insights we've gathered, remind them of their shared myths, their common ancestors." As her team sprang into action, Maya turned to the two leaders. "You both know where this path leads, the cycle of violence, retaliation, escalation. We've lived it. Let us show you another way." For a tense hour, the fate of Nexus Prime hung in the balance. Human ships, vastly outmatched in firepower, but unwavering in resolve, held the line between two angry alien armadas. On the ground, Maya and her team worked feverishly to bring the rogue elements to justice and calm the calls for vengeance. In the end, it was a combination of human determination, hard-earned wisdom, and a deep understanding of conflict that won the day. The attack was thwarted, the retaliation averted, and for the first time in centuries, the Zartuvians and Morakai sat down to really talk. As the immediate crisis passed, Maya found a moment to catch her breath. She looked out over the alien landscape, now peaceful under the purple sky, and allowed herself a small smile. They had done it. Humanity, the galaxy's youngest and most violent species, had prevented a war that could have raged for decades. But Maya knew this was just the beginning. As news of their success spread, more calls for human peacekeepers would come. The galaxy was watching, finally seeing that sometimes it takes those who know war best to forge a lasting peace. The trial by fire was over. The real work was just beginning. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Federation was in an uproar. Holograms flickered rapidly, showing scenes of chaos across multiple star systems. High Counselor Zix Lara's tendrils writhed in distress as she called for order. "Silence," her voice boomed, finally quelling the cacophony. "The situation in the Omega Cluster has spiraled out of control. The Vex-Kar and Quarian conflict has drawn in the Zartuvians, the Morakai, and now the Hrathi Collective. We stand on the brink of a galactic war. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood at attention, her face a mask of calm, despite the gravity of the situation. Beside her, Dr. Alara Vance fidgeted nervously. Ambassador Coral stepped forward. Esteemed Council, in light of the human peacekeepers' success on Nexus Prime, I propose we deploy them to the Omega Cluster immediately. A ripple of murmurs swept through the chamber. Ambassador T-Lock expanded indignantly. Preposterous. This is not some border skirmish. We're talking about 5 of the most powerful races in the galaxy on the verge of total war. It's too much for these newcomers. Maya's voice cut through the debate. With respect, Ambassador, that's exactly why we're needed. This isn't just about stopping a war. It's about preventing the fall of galactic civilization as we know it. High Counselor Zix Lara's tendrils curled thoughtfully. Captain Rodriguez, do you truly believe your team can handle this crisis? Maya's eyes gleamed with determination. Counselor, handling crises is what humans do best. Hours later, the human peacekeeping fleet dropped out of FTL on the edge of the Omega Cluster. Maya stood on the bridge of her flagship, the olive branch surveying the tactical displays. It's worse than we thought, Lieutenant Chen reported. The Vex Car and Quarians are engaged in full-scale battle. The Zar-Tuvians are targeting both sides' supply lines. The Morokai are launching guerrilla strikes, and the Hrathi they're deploying some kind of superweapon. Maya nodded grimly. Just another day at the office. Deploy all teams. I want boots on the ground and diplomats in the air. We need to get all 5 races to the table, now. What followed was the most intense peacekeeping operation in galactic history. Human ships darted between warring fleets, using themselves as living shields. On contested planets, human negotiators worked tirelessly, often under fire, to broker local ceasefires. Dr. Vance led a team of xenoanthropologists, delving deep into the histories and cultures of all 5 races, searching for common ground and shared values that could form the basis of peace talks. But it was Maya who faced the greatest challenge. Using every diplomatic trick, military strategy, and conflict resolution technique humanity had developed over millennia of warfare, she brought the leaders of all 5 races together on neutral ground, the olive branch itself. The negotiations were brutal. Centuries of mistrust, conflicting ideologies, and recent atrocities threatened to derail the talks at every turn. More than once, weapons were drawn in the conference room. But Maya and her team persevered. They didn't just translate words, they translated intentions. They didn't seek to impose peace, but to help these ancient races rediscover it for themselves. Days turned into weeks. The fighting in the cluster gradually slowed as more and more local ceasefires took hold, but the ultimate peace remained elusive. The turning point came when Maya made a drastic decision. She ordered a complete historical database of Earth to be made available to all 5 races. You see us as upstart peacekeepers, she told the assembled leaders. But we want you to see us for what we really are, a species that has faced extinction by its own hand, time and time again, and survived. Learn from our mistakes. See where this path leads. As the alien leaders immersed themselves in humanity's violent history, something remarkable happened. They began to see reflections of their own conflicts, their own justifications for war. And they saw the consequences, the devastation, the loss, the near annihilation of entire civilizations. In Earth's history, these ancient races found a mirror and a warning. The final day of negotiations was tense. The fate of the Omega Cluster, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Maya stood before the leaders, her voice steady but charged with emotion. You stand at a crossroads we've faced many times, she said. The choice between destruction and cooperation, between war and peace. We've made the wrong choice more times than I can count. But we've also made the right one. And each time we did, we grew stronger, not just as nations, but as a species. She paused, looking each leader in the eye. You have a chance to make the right choice now, not just for yourselves, but for every race that will come after you. Will you take it? As the leaders of 5 of the most powerful races in the galaxy signed the Omega Accords, Maya allowed herself a small smile. Humanity, the newcomers, the former warmongers, had just brokered the most significant peace in galactic history. The ultimate test had been passed. But as Maya looked out at the stars, she knew that in the realm of peace, there was always more work to be done. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Federation was silent for the first time in recent memory. The assembled representatives watched in awe as High Counselor Zexlara affixed the final seal to the document before her, the charter for the newly formed Human Peacekeeping Corps. Captain Maya Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez, stood at attention, her uniform adorned with commendations from a dozen alien races. Beside her, Dr. Alara Vance beamed with pride, and Ambassador Coral's usually stoic face bore a hint of a smile. With this act, Zexlara's voice rang out, "We formally recognize the extraordinary contributions of humanity to galactic peace. The Human Peacekeeping Corps will henceforth be our first line of defense against interstellar conflict." As applause filled the chamber, Maya's mind drifted back to the tumultuous months following the Omega Cluster crisis. The success of the human peacekeepers had sent shockwaves through galactic society. Initially, there had been resistance. Some races, particularly those with long-standing military traditions, balked at the idea of violent humans being in charge of keeping the peace. But the results spoke for themselves. Conflict zones that had been flashpoints for centuries were now stable. Trade routes once plagued by pirates were safe. Even age-old enemies were finding common ground, inspired by humanity's own journey from constant warfare to peaceful exploration of the stars. Maya's reverie was interrupted by Ambassador T-Lock, who had once been their staunchest critic. The gaseous being approached, its form shimmering with what Maya had learned to recognize as respect. Admiral Rodriguez T-Lock said, "I must admit, I was wrong about your species. You've proven that sometimes it takes a warrior to truly understand the value of peace." Maya nodded. "Thank you, Ambassador. But we're not warriors anymore. We're peacekeepers, mediators, diplomats. We found a way to channel our energetic nature into something constructive." As the ceremony concluded, Maya found herself on one of the Grand Chamber's balconies, looking out at the glittering expanse of the galactic capital. Dr. Vance joined her, datapad in hand. "Have you seen the latest reports?" Alara asked excitedly. "Galactic conflict is down 60% since we started full operations. And it's not just us on the ground making a difference. Other races are studying our history, our methods. They're learning from our mistakes so they don't have to repeat them." Maya smiled. "It's ironic, isn't it? We spent so long trying to overcome our violent past, and now it's become our greatest asset in forging peace." Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert. A border dispute in a distant sector was threatening to escalate. Without hesitation, Maya began issuing orders, her team springing into action with well-practiced efficiency. As she prepared to depart, Maya took one last look at the galactic capital. Humans, once seen as dangerous newcomers, now walked side by side with ancient races, respected and valued for their unique perspective. The Peacekeepers Paradox had become the galaxy's paradigm. The species forged in war had become the architects of peace. Decades later, in a classroom on a distant world, a young alien student raised a tentacle. "Professor, why do we study human history so much in our peace and conflict resolution classes?" The professor, a Zartuvian who had lived through the Omega Cluster crisis, smiled. "An excellent question. You see, humans are unique in our galaxy. They've experienced the full spectrum of conflict and resolution. Their history serves as both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to peace." The professor activated a holographic display showing scenes from Earth's history: wars, peace treaties, revolutions, and reconciliations. Humans teach us that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to handle conflict constructively. They show us that even the most warlike species can change, can channel their passion and determination into maintaining peace rather than waging war. The students' bioluminescent spots pulsed with understanding. "So we study humans to learn about ourselves." Precisely, the professor nodded. "In human history, we see reflections of our own struggles and potential. They remind us that no matter how dark the past, there's always a path to a brighter future." As the class ended, the professor looked out the window at the bustling spaceport. Human peacekeepers worked alongside beings from across the galaxy, their once feared warlike nature now a valued tool in maintaining galactic harmony. The professor smiled. The Peacekeepers Paradox had indeed become the galaxy's greatest strength. In learning to wage peace as fiercely as they once waged war, humans had not only found their place among the stars, they had helped the entire galaxy evolve. The age of perpetual conflict was over. The era of human-inspired peace had only just begun. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe and leave it a like, and I'll see you in the next one.